welcome to everyone. My name is Alex, and I don't know how many of you joined my other webinar a couple of weeks ago. If you did, welcome back. If you didn't, big welcome to you. And I'm Alex. I work here in Teamtailor as a key account manager or customer success manager, leading the UK team. And this is my colleague Frederick, who will be my co-host today, kind of like covering and all your questions and so on. So make sure to put all of your questions in the chat function. We will cover not all of the questions, of course, but most of the questions during the last 10 or 5 minutes or so. And of course, we will also go through all of the questions after the meeting. So we'll kind of do like a FAQ, and then like in the send out that we will do probably tomorrow with the recordings, some articles, and some nice information to share. But of course, I'm just gonna kind of start this webinar now. So if you're joining it late, this will be recorded, so don't worry. We will cover all of your questions, not all of them today, but we will go through them all after this meeting. And today, of course, we're gonna talk about creating a job ad and also, of course, how to create a recruitment process. And before we start, I just wanna highlight like what I'll show you right now is kind of like a Teamtailor kind of like job ad. So I just wanna give you an example. It's not that you need to have something like this, but I just want to go through kind of like how to create a job ad and what to kind of think about and the possibility of how to create a nice recruitment process and so on. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen now, and I hope, and Fredrik, please let me know if you can see this. Can you see it?
Yeah, you're ready to go.
Perfect, perfect. So I hope most of you have created a job, but of course, if you have not created a job in Teamtailor, we will be sending out like a guide, kind of like a basic guide, how you create a job. But I kind of just want to go through kind of all the process of creating a job in Teamtailor. So of course, the first thing we will start off is the job posting part. And as you can see here, the job posting part is quite like generic. It's quite like you all are already used to when you create a job ad, you put your title and you put your job description. But I kind of touch on this a little bit more. So as you can see here, of course, like the title, that's kind of like simplified of what the role is really for. And then in the job description, I usually want to highlight, like usually highlighting a lot here. It's not just about the job. It's also about you as an employee and you as a company. So of course, like the role, like the title says a lot about the role, but as you can see here, in the job description, you can also say like what you are passionate about as a company, kind of like engaging like your company values and kind of showing the candidate what you are for as an employee, and not only about the job itself. Even though of course the job description is the most important part, you can also kind of highlight who you are as an employee. Most of your candidates will probably come directly to the job ad, which means they probably not read too much about the web, about your company and who you are and what you stand for and so on. So I just want to highlight, like in the first part, can at least like highlight yourself as an employee and who you are and who you stand for. And as you can see, I'm using a lot of smileys and emojis and so on here, but that's basically because that's our company profile. So of course, first thing to think about here, what's your company profile? So this is the Teamtailor way of doing stuff. We use a lot of smileys. We use a lot of videos, as you can see here, and kind of making it a fun kind of like Teamtailor way. But of course, this is where you put in your own kind of branding. So of course, I would highlight to work a lot with pictures, a lot with text, a lot with bullet points and so on. And in order to do so, before like you create a job ad, you can actually see there are some parts here that you can actually change the format of. So you can of course like make the text bold just to kind of stand it out. You can make it italic, you can make bullet points, you can even have links inside, kind of like show you who you're working with and what customers you're working with. And you can also align it, so make it look a bit nicer. You can add images just to make it a bit more alive. You can also add GIFs, of course, and you can also use a video. So maybe you do already have a lot of like existing material internally. Of course, make sure to show that for your audience and for your candidates, because it actually kind of helps to have kind of like a standout kind of job description. And it's just like one example here. As you can see, I put the video here just to make it a bit visualized. I put my bullet points here just to kind of structure it out quite nicely. And then you can see requirements, and I also have a gift here to kind of make it more fun, but that's just how we do stuff in our company, kind of design and so on. And of course, just try it out and have a lot of fun playing around with the job ad. And then
Can I just jump in because we already have a question, and this is a pretty good one because it's where can I find the emojis?
all right, so if you go up here, you can actually see that next to the YouTube or the video, we actually have GIFs, and that's kind of like what we call it's GIFs.
Yeah,
Okay.
the emojis. Yeah, exactly. So the emoji, and that is actually something I usually, I don't know if you should good tips, but I usually use Emojipedia as a, so I always copy emojis from that website.
Yeah, and if you don't know how to find it, you can Google for it. But otherwise, you also have a short commando on either you have a MacBook or you have a PC, whatever. Sometimes you have a short commando where you can actually do like this. So I did the Control Command space, and I can actually access all my emojis right away. And depends on like what kind of computer you have. So if you want to find out, please Google, and you will be able to see what the short commando is on your computer. But that's the job ad, of course. The next thing I want to cover is what we have as we call the pitch. And the pitch is actually something kind of just to describe what this job is for, but also to make it stand out because the pitch is also something that Google searches. So Google search optimization, they pick up the pitch as well. So of course the job ad, the title, and all of that, but the pitch is something called a meta description, and that's kind of like data language, but that's something that Google tracks a lot to put you at the top result. So here I would actually put a lot of things about, of course, the company, about the role, but not too much. Just kind of keep it short, but also something to make it stand out even more. The next thing you do is, of course, to pick the department, you pick the location, and then you pick the role. And as you can see here, you also have an opportunity of picking if it's a remote status or if it's a remotely working job, as you can see here. So here you can actually pick from a different alternatives. As you can see, maybe you're temporarily remote or you are actually flexible remote or fully remote all the time. You can actually change this and show it on the job ad. Then we have the response time, and the response time is kind of more to show the candidate, okay, to give them some trust. Will they actually receive an answer? Because everyone has been a candidate. Sometimes you don't even receive an answer. This is kind of building trust like from the already starts. So of course, I would highlight to use this one. But if you feel like, no, we're not going to use that one, that's totally fine, of course. But just building some trust with the candidates. The next thing I do, who's going to be the main recruiter, who's going to be the main person hiring for this role. The next thing you can do is colleagues. And colleagues is a kind of different. It's not really the hiring team or who will have access to this job. It's actually just to show the candidate who might be your potential team members. Because of course, people loves people. And that's really what attracts people to get to know what this job is about, who is working here, to kind of create this kind of feeling that there are actually people behind this job as well and a team behind this job, to actually show that already from the beginning. The next thing we have is the appearance. I usually go with a kind of nice image just to make it a bit more alive. And as you can see, there's plenty of like design options here, but the one I want to highlight the most is the button text that you can see here. So it always default back to apply now. But if you want to change this to something else, like join us or be a part of the team or apply without CV, whatever it might be, you can actually change that text just to kind of convert candidates. So that's kind of like what it's all for, to convert candidates to actually press apply and to actually fill the application form. And that is the job description. So I would
Can I
really,
just jump
yeah,
in with a thing? Can you, because we had some questions about the people when you're adding colleagues, could you just switch to the job ad just for them to see how it looks? And because you can click in and like add
yeah,
LinkedIn profiles, for example.
yeah, totally. So in order just to kind of see how this looks, of course, like you can actually go right here to the eye and just show the job ad. So even though you're not sure right now if you're gonna publish it or not, you can actually save it as a draft and then just take a look from a kind of candidate point of view to actually see how it looks like. So here you can see this is the title, this is the department, location, this is my pitch, and this is kind of like the join us button. And then if you go down here, you will see my job ad, exactly how we created it. And where you see your colleagues is actually here. So this is the contact person, that's the recruiter. And then you can see some of your colleagues. And it's just like making a bit more like, oh, this might be your potential team members and so on. So that's kind of like how it looks on a candidate point of view.
And just to answer Sarah's question. Yeah, so when they create their own account in Teamtailor, there's where you can put the LinkedIn URL, etc., so they can find it.
Exactly. And the next thing I want to go through is the application form. And the application form is quite nice because you can actually decide by yourself what is mandatory for a candidate to fill in. So as you can see, this is where we just say, okay, name is optional, email always mandatory because you want to message with the candidates, but you fill in these fields as the personal information. The next thing you do is, of course, the questions. And I really want to highlight questions because, of course, we probably spend, all of us, like a lot of time in the CV. And of course, CVs, they are relevant, of course, but sometimes they might be just overloaded with a lot of experience and where they work at and so on. You can get a lot of things, a lot of those things from actually questions, and kind of like to see it in a much easier perspective. And it's not like I'm gonna force you to have questions or anything like that, but I just want to kind of give you a glimpse of like the value of using questions. So as you can see, I put some questions here. There's some ordinary stuff that's like more qualification questions for this kind of position. So as you can see, how many years of relevant experience? Please tell us a little bit more about your current responsibilities, just to kind of get to know the candidate more than just the CV. So that's what question is all for. And you can always pick and choose from your question bank here. You can even create questions from the very start from here to kind of like have different type of questions. The next thing, I'm not going to cover this too much, but you can actually send out a survey. And that's something we discussed in the last webinar and something that we will send out later after this webinar. But surveys is a great opportunity of not just tracking like responsibilities, what they used to do at the normal work, how many years of experience they have, but also kind of like send out an anonymous survey telling them a bit more. Okay, maybe where did you hear about us, or a D&I reporting or equal opportunities kind of survey. You can actually have that right after the application form. Then of course we have the responses and we have the reject email. The next thing you do is of course the chat. And chat is something that's optional, and that's something just that I want to say, try it out if you feel like you have the time, because chat is really a nice function which makes you allow candidate to actually chat with you before they apply. So it might be kind of like a technical role or whatever it might be hard to know like what you're looking for. So this is just like kind of allowing the candidate to actually be able to chat with you, ask questions meanwhile they do the application, because maybe it's a great fit for them, or maybe this is not really a job that they should apply for. At least they can ask the question before applying. So of course, something that I would highlight to actually play around with and have like just have a look at. But if you don't want, of course, you can always disable the chat if you want to here. And then, of course, one of the major areas when creating a job is, of course, building the recruitment structure or the recruitment process. So if we go to stages here, you can actually see that, okay, I already kind of prepared this, but this is where you add your stages of recruitment or the candidate journey, so to call it. So in Teamtailor, we always have the inbox stage and the hire stage. That's the only default stages that's always there. Anything in between, that's where you kind of decide where do your candidates go through during the recruitment process. So that's kind of like the stages that I built up. But then you can also see there's some boxes here. And what we call these boxes is actually triggers. And triggers is kind of like an automation. So if you have a trigger at one stage, and if you move a candidate to that stage, that will trigger a happening to that candidate. So I just want to highlight some triggers here. I don't want to show you all of them. They will take too much time, but I just want to highlight triggers. So to add a trigger, you can add a trigger here. As you can see, I have a smart move. And back to those questions that we were talking about in the application form, you can actually smart move candidates based on those answers. So here's just an example. That was one of the questions that I was asking. And as you can see, 5 to 15, that's like, if you have more than 5 years experience, I'm gonna move you right away to the reviewing stage. The next thing that happens after reviewing is actually sending out an email to the candidate, just kind of letting them know we are now taking a look at your CV. And that's fully automated. You don't need to do anything, just adding a trigger. And then, of course, I send them to screening. And in screening, I actually have what we call a partnership trigger. So we have a lot of partners in Teamtailor, and we will send out the marketplace to you after this call. But this is just one of our partners, Alva Labs, which actually sending out an assessment directly to the candidate. And based on their score, they actually going to be moved right away to interviews if they score 70 and above. So we have a lot of these like partnerships, and they're really good ones, and you can get a lot of more details about these candidates. But as you see, the next thing that happens when they move to the interview stage, I actually do a notes coming for an interview team, just to kind of highlight to the team that I've now dragged this candidate or maybe automated, and everyone get notified in the hiring team that we have someone to interview. So it's also like for internal communication, you can use these triggers for not only for the candidate, but also for internal communication. And then I can go on forever, but as you can see, there's quite like an automated kind of like process, and you can move people around, like, and stuff will be happening. So as you can see, I moved into background control. We actually have a tool that's called CRI, which actually sends out a background control on the candidate, and you will receive the answers and responses in Teamtailor. And then, of course, you move them along the process, and hopefully they get hired. And when they are hired, you can see now they actually sent to HiBob, which is one of our HR system partners. So which means that when you drag into hire, they are automatically pulled through into your HR system. And this is just some of the automation you can do with triggers. And I would really want to highlight triggers because you can do so many things. And this is just one of few examples. But other things you can do when creating a job on stages, you can also set a guide time. A guide time doesn't necessarily move a candidate or anything like that. But a guide time actually warns you that, okay, someone stayed in this stage for more than 3 days. You will then see, okay, we have an overdue candidate here because we want to streamline our kind of recruitment process. We want it to go fast. And if we forget about people in the inbox stage, maybe that's not like how you want to deal with candidates. They wait there without responses. So that's really what a guide time can do to you, like highlighting that you have some old candidates without actions taken on this kind of stage. So that is what the guide time is all for. Another thing we have is actually anonymous mode. And I want to show you the anonymous mode just here in a few minutes to kind of show you how it looks like. Because this is a beautiful kind of function where they can actually anonymize the full candidate card except the relevant information. So for instance, the name, the email, the picture, you won't even know who the candidate are, but you can actually see their references. You can see where they're working, how many years they spent there, where they studied, but you would never know until you actually move them to screening who they really are. So that's just kind of like to remove bias and kind of proactively work unbiased in terms of recruitment. And then you might see here, that's actually just the active stage, but then you actually also have a rejected stage. And the rejected stage, same thing there. You can also have happenings or triggers happening after you reject someone. So as you can see here, we actually have something called an NPS survey. And I'm not going to go into too many details about NPS surveys, but NPS surveys is actually kind of like a general kind of worldwide measurement. And it's basically just a scoring 0 to 10 of how likely they would recommend you or recommend a colleague or a friend to apply to this position or to your company. That basically gives you kind of a nice data that you can track in our reporting, what people or candidate think about your recruitment process. Maybe it's going too slow. At least now you would know that. Or no, I don't think the interview was that structured. And then you pretty much know, okay, we should structure our interviews more because we receive a survey responses that it's taking too much time. It's not proper interviews. It's not like whatever you want to measure on, of course, but it's just giving you nice intels about what the candidate think about your recruitment process. And then maybe you want to go and add more triggers, add more guide time to speed up your recruitment, add more internal notes of how they should structure their interviews. And I can go on for it for 2 hours if I wanted to, but it's a really fun subject. And I really want to highlight using triggers and guide time to streamline your process and create the best candidate journey ever. The next thing,
Can I
hiring
just
team.
jump in? I see you like one. We're getting a lot of questions. I'm sorry if I don't have the. I'm trying to respond to as many as possible, but we're getting a lot of them. But just one I saw with the MPS, because Jana asked about if you can modify the MPS, and like the MPS is not, you can't modify it. It will, like, it's a fixed question, or a fixed question, and then of course the candidate can choose the score 1 to 10 and then add a comment. But what you also can use is the feature service. So that is just like another feature we have, just to highlight.
Exactly. And the service is another part, but you actually track that information, but it's fully anonymous. So you won't know from who that response was from, but you can actually create service by yourself and create questions by yourself. And we will send it out after this after this meeting, of course, but you can actually customize a lot of surveys, have tens of questions, whatever it might be, and send it out exactly like an MPS survey. Yes. The next thing we have is the hiring team. It's quite just like, this is where you invite who should have access and who should be able to work together with you in terms of recruitment, who should be able to see these candidates. So as you can see, always put the main recruiter, that's going to be the contact person. Then of course, I just add additional users based on the employees or users in the system, and they will get invited to the job by email. So they click on the job and they will now have access to candidate, be able to help you out, add notes, be able to just help you out in terms of recruitment. The next thing, just briefly gonna touch on this, external recruiters. You can actually invite users that are not part of the company into Teamtailor, which we call external recruiters. But the only thing they can't see is your candidates. So they can only see the candidates that they upload to the system. They won't be able to see the candidates that apply to this job. They can only upload. And we will be sending out more information about external recruiters, but it's a great function in order to use. The next thing we have is interview kits, and interview kits is really nice because this is where you can actually kind of receive feedback from your hiring team, and you build the questions, you build them structured so they know what questions to ask the candidate, or you ask the hiring manager a question, and it will just be stored nicely in the platform. I'll take you around that in 2 minutes. But of course, after I'm done, either I just, of course, publish the job right away, or I save it and I want to take a look at the preview, how the job ad looks like, or I can actually schedule when the job should be published. I can schedule it for next week because maybe I have a lot to do and I can't take action this week, so I might want to push it for Monday next week. Then of course I can schedule it for Monday. I can also schedule when the job should be removed from anyone from applying, which is a quite nice function because sometimes you have a deadline that this should be fixed. This position should be filled before the end of the month. We should have an opening of 2 weeks of applying, then we shut it down and work with the candidates we have. But it's just a nice function that you can see down the line. Otherwise, I press publish and the jobs are, of course, published on the job boards and on the Teamtailor website. But just to kind of give you a glimpse how this looks like, we're going to go back to the job here. So you kind of just to show you the process in real time. So as you can see, these are all my stages. You can see the different triggers, happening here. So if you have a current process and you don't want to go in and edit the job for some reason, you can always add your triggers right away from here. So you can actually add triggers right away to the stage, or you can just see, okay, this is the triggers that are happening. Some are tagging candidates, some are sending out messages, someone do a background check, reference checking, even sending the contract and receiving the answer back in Teamtailor. You can go crazy, of course, with this, but I just want to highlight like automation is good, but it's always keeping the balance. You don't want to be too automated. You still want to have that the candidate touch on things and really be personal in your communication. But there are certain like general stuff or manual tasks that could be removed with a trigger. So I don't want to say like go local and just use triggers for all your communication, but be balanced and really find your way and how you want to do this. But then of course, before I see we have 3 minutes, I've been talking for too long almost, but I just want to highlight this anonymous mode. As you can see, we actually replace the candidate's name and the picture. So as you can see here, they are now rebranded, I was about to say, but renamed of more of an animal name, just to kind of remove who the candidate really is. So if we move into Magenta Swan here, we're just going to go take a look. Perfect. And then you can see, we can't see the email because that could actually tell me, okay, what is the candidate name? What is the candidate gender? Whatever it might be, just to remove all the bias. So then we can see, of course, all the questions, but we can't see the candidate's name on the CV. It's actually removed. If it was a picture here, we would actually remove that picture. And then we can just like screen and see here, like you won't be able to find out who this candidate really is, but you will still be able to screen the CV just to take a look and if they fit for purpose for this position. The next thing I can do is, of course, to kind of reveal who the candidate are. So if we move Margareta Swan here, Magenta Swan, sorry, to this view, you will then see that we can now populate the name. So here we have Linda Harris. So of course, when you do the screening or getting closer to an interview, you might want to see who the actual is. But when you're doing the screening, you might want to keep it like fully anonymized. And that is just like a brief explanation of that. And then of course, you can then see all the activities happening here. Candidates was sent to Alva Labs, a new result from Alva Labs was received. You will be able to see the CV again and the names again and all of that. And I see that we only have 2 minutes left, actually. It went really fast, but I love to do these sessions and really just talk about this. And what I would kind of like just not expect or anything like that, but what I want you to do is basically to take a look at triggers, take a look at how you do your job ads, what can you do extra, what can you show the candidates, and how can you streamline your recruitment process to create the best candidate journey that is possible to make. Triggers can do a lot of things in terms of internal communication and external happenings as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it that
I have a lot of questions. I'm just thinking if I can try to squeeze them in the last 30 seconds because I see we have some. Uh, Sorry for interrupting, but because some people were asking about tags and how if they can tag themselves. So I think like we maybe need some more about the case, but otherwise, like very shortly explained, you can tag automatically with triggers, but then of course you decide what the tag should be. You can
yeah,
also tag manually, which is which very easily, and then you can rename like name the tags whatever you want. But if you want the candidate to somehow maybe give their own tags, my tip would be to use maybe questions. It a little bit depends on what you are looking for and the case in this case that you wrote. But otherwise, with questions, if you are putting them in the application form, that is something you can search on. So that's also good to know. Um, and I also saw that someone is like switching job ads language. We actually released a feature that's called multi-language page. Uh, so we will give that because it will take too much time to explain that, but we will give that link if anyone is interested in that. Uh, and how do you set anonymous mode? Maybe I don't know if you showed it, but maybe you can do it very quickly.
yeah, totally. So either you do it, of course, like in the stage itself, just put it on here, or you actually do it in the not like in the stage when you create a job. So if you go back to create a job and if you go to stages, you will see kind of like an anonymous kind of thing here that can actually toggle on the anonymous mode. So if you, for instance, want to turn it on here, you can actually just toggle it on, and that stage is now fully anonymized.
Great.
Uh,
And also to, oh, sorry, go.
yeah, no, go on.
No, I saw that Magnus, why is it possible to only have one employee? Everyone can fill out their own interview kits. So when you're adding an interview kit, each user will have their own interview kit. So then you can have, if you're 5 team members, there will be 5 interview kits. And then when you fill out the score, you can also compare the feedback between each other if you want to.
Exactly. And of course, like this was a session just to like to show you a little bit what you can do with a job ad, what you can build recruitment processes with triggers to create the best candidate journeys and so on. I know we're going over time right now, but I really want to hint that after the summer, we will actually do more of a session about candidate management. So working with interview kits, working with notes and many other things. And that will happen after the summer. So I'm really excited for that one. And of course, maybe we should have more time for that one after, because that will take a bit more time. But other than that, I'm just really happy so many could join today as well. And we will be sending out a handout probably by tomorrow with the session recorded with some helpful guidelines. And of course, we will be reading through all the questions you put in the chat. and summarize them in nicely ordered with answers to your questions. But yeah, thank you very, very much for joining, and thank you for everyone writing. Super
Thanks for all
helpful.
the questions.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's really
We're trying
helpful.
our best, but you will also, we will try to do a FAQ afterwards also in the email. But
Exactly.
awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. Really nice to see you all. See you soon.
Thank you so much. Take care and stay safe.
Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye bye.